A pleasant good morning to you. Good morning to you, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Push Past 10. This is a special presentation of crowdfunding, an exciting new tool for investing in the Eastern Caribbean. We're so happy that you're joining us this morning. We have with us a special presentation from the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, as well as Dev Solutions Consulting LLC. So today we are joined by a number of people who will tell us more about this investment opportunity in the Eastern Caribbean. Today we are joined by Dr. Winsome Leslie, the CEO and founder of Dev Solution Consulting LLC, Ms. Alusha Faisal, Chief Executive Officer of Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, as well as Mr. Tom Ward, who is the technical consultant on this project. And they're here to tell us more about crowdfunding. If you live in North America, you may be familiar with crowdfunding as a source of investments, but we are starting a new chapter in the Caribbean where it is going to be made available to Dominica. I am Simone Matthew. If this is your first time joining us on Push Past 10, I want you to know that Push Past 10 is a network of a few Facebook pages as well as YouTube. Also, Q95 FM radio, the most listened to radio in Dominica and in the diaspora, as well as US-based TDN radio. And Push Past 10, our one goal is to advance the lives of Dominicans and Caribbean people in the Caribbean, as well as in the diaspora. So as you come on in, I'm giving everyone a couple of minutes to come on in. Don't forget to share the live. Let everyone know that we are here for this important presentation. And you know, we are all about collaborations. If you joined us last week, you would have known that we started a partnership with Western Illinois University and Eastern Illinois University to offer funding for master's degrees programs to Dominica and our Caribbean people. So that is what we're about. We're about finding opportunities for us as Caribbean people. And so this opportunity, this crowdfunding opportunity, presents yet another way we can invest in our islands, we can invest in our people and earn a return. Because of course you want to earn a return if you're investing in any venture. So come on and join the live, share the live, let everyone know that we are here. And we will now give an opportunity for our guests to unmute their mics and simply introduce themselves. I think I missed Mr. Alvin Thomas in the process of saying who is joining us today. And we want to say a very special thank you to Alvin as well as Mr. Matt Render, who were the ones who kind of coordinated this effort to bring this program to our audience today. So everyone just unmute your mics and greet the audience as we get started today. Dr. Leslie, we'll start with you.
Great. Thanks so much, Simone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Winsome Leslie, as you said, CEO of Dev Solutions Consulting. I've been working very closely with the ECSRC on this project, working specifically around awareness raising and training, both for entrepreneurs, because of course we need investee companies for this opportunity, as well as investors. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Ms. Faisal, please say good morning to the audience.
Good morning. Good morning, Simone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alusha Faisal. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission. And it is a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our little discussion on our crowdfunding project.
Yes, thank you for being here. Mr. Ward?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Great pleasure to virtually meet you all and to be here. So I'm Tom Ward, and I'm the technical consultant on this project, and I'm helping to develop those sort of the regulatory framework to make sure it sort of balances the benefits and the risks, and making sure that we have the most appropriate regulatory framework so we can sustain equity crowdfunding in the Eastern Caribbean. It's a great pleasure to join you all.
Yes, thank you for being here. And someone who needs no introduction to our Dominican audience, Mr. Alvin Thomas. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Simon. Good morning. Let me say good morning to our guests this morning, and let me say how pleased I am to be able to co-host with you on Push Past 10. It's an initiative which we are both excited about, an initiative by the Eastern Caribbean Security Regulatory Commission. And obviously, I'm looking forward to that engagement with our folks in the diaspora. So,
yes.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. So if you're just joining us, this is a special presentation of crowdfunding, an exciting new tool for investing in the Eastern Caribbean. So let us just get a better understanding of who is joining us today. So like I mentioned before, we have Dr. Winsome Leslie, who's the CEO and founder of Delve Solutions Consulting. Dr. Leslie is an international development specialist and a certified business advisor who is currently president and CEO of Dev Solutions Consulting. The firm provides advisory and consulting services in micro and small business development to business intermediaries in the U.S. and frontier markets. With her team, she has conducted microfinance and small business financing assessments and demand surveys, designed projects to increase business financing, and designed training programs in small business financing and entrepreneurs. She is currently the senior advisor at the Caribbean Microfinance Network, the only regional network of microfinance institutions in the Caribbean, and a member of the advisory committee for the U.S. government-funded Inter-America Foundation, which focuses on community development in Latin America and the Caribbean. So certainly an honor to have Dr. Leslie with us today. Then we have Ms. Alusha Faisal, and she is the financial services professional with over 30 years experience in financial services sector in the ECCU, with more than 15 years in financial regulation and supervision. Ms. Faisal is an experienced commercial banker, bank examiner, and securities regulator. Alusha is currently employed as the Chief Executive Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, ECSRC, and is responsible for the day-to-day management and operations of the ECCR Secretariat. And then we also have Mr. Tom Ward, is the technical consultant on this project. He spent over 12 years as the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, leading on the implementation of many policies initiatives, including the UK's implementation of MIFID2 and evaluating the UK's approach to crowdfunding. Most recently, he established and led the FCA's Regulatory Sandbox Initiative, seeking to encourage responsible innovation in financial services. He has also worked for the University of Cambridge Centre for Alternative Finance, working with and advising policymakers and regulators around the world on financial innovation. So we have quite a qualified team of experts here with us today. And of course, Alvin, we cannot leave you out of the mix. So just give us a brief introduction of who Alvin Thomas is for all the new listeners who are joining us today. Alvin, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, a brief introduction of who's Alvin Thomas.
Yeah, my bad. Well, I am a small business owner. I reside in Atlanta. I'm from Dominica. Prior to I migrating to the United States, which is amazing how time flies by. It's already 25 years since I migrated from Dominica. But prior to that, I worked in the public service as a senior public officer. My last position being that of Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. And my background really is in the area of human resource. That is what my training back in Dominica. But when I moved to the States, I ventured in the area of optical, the field of opticals. So I currently retired in the optical business and currently own an optical business, an eye optical business that I run. And apart from that, I'm involved in a number of initiatives as it relates to not just Dominica, but the Caribbean at large. So anything that deals with development of people as a region, I'm associated with that. So I engage with Simon on a regular basis on this program, as well as other programs that held that seeks to promote and develop, as I say, our Caribbean people. Yes, so that's what I believe in our JC's tenet that service to humanity is the best work of life, and that's my mission really on earth.
Yes, thank you. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you of course to our Facebook Live, YouTube Live audience who are joining us today. So let's just jump right into the presentation, the reason that we're here today. So I will hand the floor over to Dr. Leslie and Tom Ward as they present the information, crowdfunding, an exciting new tool for investing in the Eastern Caribbean. Dr. Leslie?
Thank you so much, Simone. If you'd start the presentation from the beginning. This presentation is just to frame the discussion about crowdfunding and the opportunities, both for investors in this case, but also for small businesses. So let's go to the first slide, please. So what is crowdfunding? Basically, it's raising money for a project or for your business from the crowd. And there are several different kinds of crowdfunding. It's usually in an online platform means. Next slide, please. Yes, so it's raising money for a project or business from the public or from the crowd, as we say, through a regulated financial intermediary, in this case, an online platform. Next. There are different kinds of crowdfunding. The first, donations, which many of you might be familiar with, where you're asking for money for your project or your service, or if you're an NGO, you're raising funds in education, health, etc. And you're asking people to commit to financing you without giving anything in return. The second type is a reward crowdfunding, and this is where you are giving a prize or a reward or a gift in return for the funding. Next slide, please. Then we have another type called debt crowdfunding, and this is essentially peer-to-peer lending, where individuals on the platform will provide a small loan, which is repaid to you as the person seeking the funding with interest. Usually these loan rates are much lower than conventional commercial bank rates. So this is a very attractive way of raising money, particularly if you're a sole proprietor, or you're starting out a new venture, you're writing a book. This might be one way of raising funds. And then we come to the topic of what we are going to discuss this morning, which is equity crowdfunding, which essentially is raising funds via an online platform in exchange for ownership in your company, meaning stocks or shares. So let's just review very quickly the crowdfunding process. Essentially, companies or individuals, sole proprietors, let's say, more often than not, they're small businesses though, they will seek out funding via the platform by preparing what's known as a campaign. That would involve a pitch deck, videos, etc., capability statements, financial statements, etc. But this is all put together in a package, which is then hosted on the platform. Investors who are interested, please go back to the previous slide. Investors who are interested will now look at these various campaigns and make a selection in terms of which company they'll invest in. The funds are pledged on the platform. When campaign closes, and there's usually a 3 to 4 month period for a campaign, when the campaign closes, all things being equal, the funds are assuming all the money is raised by the individual company, the funds are transferred via the platform to the companies, and the companies in turn will transfer shares, in this case, to the investors, again, via the platform. The ownership, the certificates and so on will be transferred via the platform. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's zero in specifically on equity crowdfunding. Next slide. There are certain key players in what I call the ecosystem for equity crowdfunding. There are the entrepreneurs who will raise money via the platform and, of course, issue shares in exchange for that funding. There are the investors, many of you might be on this call now, who are interested in diversifying your portfolio. So you would be perhaps looking at small companies to invest in. And then here we have the regulatory framework. And here I'm using the ECSRC as an example, where there must be a policy framework to make sure that there are standards and so on, and there are rules of the game that are being applied equally to all the parties. Then, of course, there are the investment advisors and brokers who will be working with investors, giving advice, and in some instances, perhaps even providing some training to folks to understand the equity crowdfunding process, the risks, etc. And then finally, you have the crowdfunding platforms without which the process would not work. They are the ones who screen both investors and companies, and they basically run the show in terms of being the intermediary between the investee companies on the one hand and the investors on the other. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about the advantages and the risks. Of course, like any investment, as an investor, you have to be prepared that that investing in a crowdfunding on a crowdfunding platform would be a risk. But there are certain advantages, both on the part of entrepreneurs as well as investors. So let's just talk about entrepreneurs very quickly. For companies, it's a faster way to raise investment capital. You're exposed to a larger group of investors, unlike traditional equity investment, angel investing, for example, where you're just dealing with one or a handful of investors. In equity crowdfunding, because it's in an online environment, you're exposed to a broad range of investors. So perhaps you could have anywhere from 50 to 100 or more investors investing in your company, each providing a smaller amount of money, but in the aggregate, it could be quite substantial. Also, equity crowdfunding is a way of increasing visibility for the company as well. And it could also help to create a loyal following for your product or service. This is one way of generating interest in the product or service over the long term. Next slide, please. Other advantages. It's good for startups who have scaling potential, who have a good business model, because it's a way of not only validating your product or service, but it also can help you to scale relatively quickly through exposure to a broader range of players. In terms of investors now, the most important advantage perhaps for crowdfunding is that it helps you to create a diversified portfolio so that you spread the risk across several kinds of investing instruments or size of companies. And so at the end of the day, you might get a better return than you would if you had a more concentrated portfolio. Secondly, crowdfunding allows non-accredited investors, to invest, whereas in traditional equity, you have to be accredited. You have to meet certain benchmarks and requirements to invest. True that there are requirements for investors on equity crowdfunding platforms as well, and Tom will go into that. But the important thing is that it democratizes, if you will, investment and brings possibilities for investment for the ordinary man on the street who might not have an opportunity otherwise. Next slide, please. So let's move on to risks. From the point of view of the entrepreneur, there are risks as well as from the point of view of the investor. So let's start with the entrepreneur. First, there's a need to build momentum for this. It's not you don't just put your campaign on the platform and then hope for the best. It's a process, both before you develop that campaign, during the campaign, and afterwards. It can be a significant investment of time and effort on the part of the company as well to put a campaign together and to go through the process. It can be expensive depending on how ready you are, how ready your business is in terms of organizational structure, whether you have your financials together and so forth. And perhaps most importantly, if you don't raise your target amount, the funds are not transferred. And this is because usually, and your target raise is linked to a specific project. And if the argument goes that if you don't raise the required amount for that project, then the project cannot be undertaken. So that's the rationale for why you would not get anything, any of the funds, if you don't meet your target. So from the point of view of the entrepreneur, the selection and the thinking through of what the target raise should be is very important. Next slide, please. All right, from the point of view for the investor, the most important thing to note is that this is a risk, like any investment, so you could lose your money. So it's very important to think through and assess your risk tolerance before going into any kind of investment, including this. It's true that you're committing smaller amounts of money in a crowdfunding scenario, but nevertheless, it's a risk. Secondly, investors have no control over the investing companies, unlike in angel investment, where the investor is more hands-on and oftentimes negotiates a seat on the company's board in exchange for the funding, so they have a little bit more control over how the companies run. Here, it's a very hands-off process. The investor, you put your money, you commit your funds. If the amount is raised, you transfer those funds, you get an ownership certificate, a stock ownership certificate. You receive regular reports from the company on how things are going, but you're not involved in the day-to-day or any decision-making in terms of the company. Third, there's a lack of liquidity. Once you commit the funds, this is not a speculative play. You have to be prepared to leave your money there for a number of years to allow the company to grow, and quite truthfully, to stand a chance of getting your money back with a profit. Also, if you have to think about the whole issue of dilution. If the company is issuing more shares later, say for example, the company successfully that you have invested in grows to the point where they now want to go for a second crowdfunding round or an angel investment round, for example, then the value of your shares will be diluted, will be lessened if that company goes for a second round. So you have to think about that when you're investing and you have to look at the company carefully before you make that investment decision. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about the crowdfunding project itself, the ESRC initiative. Next slide, please. Okay, the general objective is basically to promote the further development of the capital markets and the ECCU. Remember, the ECSRC is a regulator, and one of their mission, really, is to support the growth and development of the capital markets through proper regulation. The specific objective of this project is to increase finance and increase the financing options for small businesses by facilitating this equity crowdfunding initiative in the region. Let me just say that the ESRC is setting the table, so to speak. They are not launching a platform. They are basically providing the ingredients and creating the policy framework and the environment and the ecosystem to create an initiative. Next slide. So let's go through the three key elements. The first is the validation of the regulatory framework. The ESRC drafted 2 years ago a crowdfunding policy framework, and the project is being used to validate that framework. We had a series of stakeholder consultations back in September with public and private sector in the region. We had 3 sessions. We got a lot of feedback on the rules themselves, and those rules are now being redefined and refined based on those comments. And Tom will talk about the rules a little bit more specifically in a few minutes. Second piece of the project is sensitization and training, and this is my responsibility in the project. The idea is to make folks aware in the ECCU, both locally within the region and also in the diaspora, about crowdfunding as an option for financing on the one hand and investing on the other. And linked to that, to sort of build appetite and interest in this as an option. And secondly, to do some training, specific target training to entrepreneurs, to help to do a bit of a deeper dive into crowdfunding and how to prepare a campaign and what's involved and how companies can get ready for when a platform is launched formally in the ECCU. And then the third piece deals with testing crowdfunding platforms, prototypes of a crowdfunding platform or platforms in a protected sandbox arrangement with a view to seeing how the rules work with those prototypes. So those are the 3 pieces. And I would venture to say that coming out of this project, we hope that we will have at least one platform prototype that's ready to be tested in the market. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to turn over now to my colleague, Tom Ward, who's going to talk specifically about the rules aspect. And I suspect he'll also talk about how the rules apply to investors. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leslie. Hi, everybody. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes giving a very high-level overview of the policy framework and the crowdfunding rules that we have developed, and really interested in any questions or comments that people on the call may have. So if you go to the next slide, please. So just in summary, we want to provide a framework to facilitate equity crowdfunding take place in Dominica and the Eastern Caribbean more widely, providing what I hope are proportionate requirements and responsibilities, both for the equity crowdfunding platforms who will be facilitating the transactions, for the companies that are looking to raise capital in this way, but also ensuring we put in place adequate and appropriate investor protections to ensure that those people who may be inexperienced investors who are looking to invest in companies fully understand the risks and can make appropriate decisions about what they may want to invest in. So if you go to the next slide, please. So very broadly, these rules, and I will go with these rules. I think there's about 40 pages of rules, as you can probably imagine. They go into quite some detail, but I'll give you some of the key obligations. So firstly, they introduce a new activity to allow crowdfunding platforms to become authorized to launch these online portals to facilitate equity crowdfunding transactions. So as Dr. Leslie says, these will be private organizations that will develop these portals that will be designed to bring together companies who are seeking investment in their business with investors who may be looking to invest in them. So potential investors will register with the portal, to allow them to view the various investment opportunities available and to make investments in return for equity in a particular company's business. So once authorized, these portals will enable companies to promote their business and to effectively launch a campaign, as Dr. Leslie says, giving companies the opportunity to tell a compelling story about their business and to detail the specific opportunity to potential investors. So essentially to pitch their business to investors, be they members of the public or indeed investment professionals. So this is likely, one component of this is likely to be a pitch deck or other promotional material. And we also expect these portals to have in place online community discussions, allowing actual and prospective investors to interact with each other and the business looking to raise capital. So you may be aware of some of these crowdfunding portals in other jurisdictions. So firms such as Seedrs and Crowdcube are fairly well established in other jurisdictions. And so the framework we're looking to establish is to allow similar businesses to become established in the Eastern Caribbean and to support companies from the Eastern Caribbean looking to raise investment. And as Dr. Leslie says, we're also looking to establish a regulatory sandbox to support these firms, help them get to market, and to ensure we have the right regulatory frameworks in place. So that's from the crowdfunding portal perspective. I'll just quickly talk about some of the obligations we're looking to put on those companies that are looking to raise capital via these portals. I think it's fair to say we expect the companies looking to raise money will be smaller businesses incorporated in the ECCU. Those businesses who are probably not ready to launch on a listed market and are looking for seed capital or capital to grow their business. And indeed, one of the key stipulations in the rules is that businesses can't raise more than 5 million East Caribbean dollars via equity crowdfunding in a single year, which I think suggests that it'll be smaller companies that'll be more attracted to this. So we don't want to make the requirements unduly onerous, but we think there are certain minimum obligations that companies need to comply with. So for those companies that do want to raise money through this, we expect them to have a clear business plan and financial statements, and including historical statements and future projections, which we'd expect them to disclose to potential investors via the crowdfunding portal. And we'd also expect a certain amount of due diligence on the company by the platform. So, for example, background checks and assessments of creditworthiness. We'd expect the company to clearly explain how they valued the business and the valuation they've made, and to also clearly specify what they would do with the proceeds of the capital they're looking to raise via equity crowdfunding. And we'd also expect companies to inform potential investors about key risks to the business, again, in order for them to make an informed decision about whether they should invest. And we'd also expect companies to keep a shareholder register and record of ownership of any equity that they have transferred. So throughout this, we're trying to be proportionate and trying not to create an unduly burdensome regulatory framework that creates barriers for companies to raise money in this way. But we think there are sensible sort of minimum standards we would expect these firms to comply with. On the investor side, and I think just reflecting back on the risks of equity crowdfunding that Dr. Leslie just highlighted, we'll look to introduce certain investor safeguards to ensure that investors are appropriately protected. Again, these are designed to be proportionate, and we want to ensure that every type of investor has the opportunity to participate in equity crowdfunding, and that creating a regulatory framework or putting in place a regulatory framework provides a degree of legitimacy and gives confidence to investors to engage in this activity. And I think around the world, generally equity crowdfunding attracts retail investors with relatively small amounts to invest in a particular business proposition. And these small amounts can aggregate up to a significant amount of capital for the business. So given the expected interest from retail investors, we propose to introduce investment limits based on income or net worth to ensure that retail investors do not unduly expose themselves to excessive risk. And I won't go through these in detail, but they're sort of aggregated based on the level of income or the net worth. So as an example, for investors who have an annual income of up to 100,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars a year, we're suggesting they may purchase securities up to a maximum value of 5% of that total annual income in any 12-month period. And those percentages increase as someone's income or net worth increases. We also think it's important to allow accredited investors, so those high net worth individuals, corporations, financial services business, to be able to invest in equity crowdfunding. And for accredited investors, we don't propose any investment caps or any investment limits in the amount they can invest in a particular business. So that's one of the key safeguards, I think, investment limits, and it's very common around the world that those regulators that have introduced bespoke regimes for equity crowdfunding have in place these investment limits, and we think they're sensible safeguards. And we also will require companies to disclose certain information about their business and offering. For example, a description of their business, how much they're looking to raise, and the valuation of their business. We want to standardize these disclosures as far as possible. So, for example, by requiring the same information of each investment opportunity to be contained in something we're calling an offering document, which must be provided by the business looking to raise money to all prospective investors via the portal. So this will require certain, absolutely fundamental key information about the business and its offering. So, for example, the type of securities being offered, the amount of securities being offered, the key risks, the financials, and any fees charged to investors. And we'd also expect that the key risks of equity crowdfunding in general, some of those that Dr. Leslie spoke about, are clearly disclosed to investors on the crowdfunding portal. And finally, in terms of investor protection, the rules introduce a cooling off period where the investor can cancel an investment commitment for any reason up to 48 hours after the investment commitment has been confirmed. So that was I'm very conscious of time, and that was a real whistle-stop tour of the regime we're looking to put in place. I hope that's provided a useful overview. As I reiterate, we want this to be proportionate, to allow companies to raise funds without putting undue barriers in place, while ensuring the right amount of investor protection for prospective investors. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I think I'll pass to Simone or maybe Mr. Thomas to continue the discussion.
Yes, so we're going to bring back the entire panel back to the floor as we continue the discussion. I'll remove the slide. And I do apologize, Ms. Faisal, you were supposed to do the introductory remarks, but we got so excited about the project, we jumped right in. So I will have you go ahead and provide your remarks at this point. My apologies.
Right. Thank you, Simone. I can understand. Yes, certainly. It is an exciting project, and the ECSRC itself is also very excited about this project. But just to provide your viewers with some background on the Eastern Caribbean securities market, the ECSM, or the Eastern Caribbean Securities Market, was established in October 2001 as a formal regional securities market for the member countries of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. And those countries are Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, the Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That date also marked the establishment or the birth of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission as the regional regulatory body for the securities market. And the ECSRC is charged with ensuring compliance with the securities laws so as to protect investors in securities. So we're like a mini US SEC. We don't have the resources that they have and the people that they have, but we're still very effective in what we do. And our role, as Dr. Leslie would have said, is not only to develop the securities market, but also to ensure the protection of investors. And that is one of the reasons why we have developed this project. One, we've recognized that there's a need and there are challenges faced by many small businesses in our jurisdiction when it comes to accessing financing. And also we want to make sure that we provide the environment that would allow persons to be able to access finance, those MSMEs to access finance, and for investors to be able to do that, provide them with that financing in a safe space. So the ECSRC is very, very, I guess, as like I said, excited about this project. And I must big up our sponsors at this point, the Caribbean Development Bank, through its Caribbean Technological Consultancy Services, which is working with the ECSRC on this project. They are providing the funding for us to implement this entire project. As Winsome would have, Dr. Leslie, sorry, would have indicated, the main objectives of the project are to enhance the regulatory framework for non-traditional sources of finance for ECCU member countries and to increase access to finance for MSMEs by facilitating the development of an equity crowdfunding platform. So to be clear, the ECSRC is not introducing a crowdfunding platform, but rather what we will be doing is creating a regulatory and supervisory environment for the launch of a crowdfunding platform or platform. So essentially, in addition to allowing small businesses to raise capital, we're also trying to engage one or two firms who may have the capacity and capability to provide the platform that would work to offer crowdfunding in the jurisdiction. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So indeed, very exciting. And Alvin, I'm sure you have some comments that you would like to make about, the potential for Dominica, the other Caribbean islands, the potential for the diaspora to be able to invest in the region. So what are your thoughts, Alvin? Some remarks you want to make?
Yeah, certainly. Let me again just thank Dr. Simon and Tom, as well as Alucia, for their comments and their contribution this morning. Certainly, that's a very exciting initiative. Those of us who are listening on this program right now would recognize and realize the relationship that exists between those of us, meaning I would say maybe investors in the diaspora, and those back home in the region, in Dominica and the rest of the region, who one might say are the business people who want to undertake certain businesses and the challenges that they confront in that regard, meaning that finance and capital. So it's a very exciting initiative, I will say. One of the things that I have found, as I said, I haven't been in the United States for almost 25 years, is that there is not a focused approach in harnessing the resources of Caribbean diasporas. And that resource could come in the form of technical resource, human resource, or even financial resource. And I think that in itself, with the establishment of a platform like that, a crowdfunding platform, would help to channel and bridge that gap. I think it was in Dominica's case, for example, in 2020, if I believe it was, the World Bank issued a report that stated that Dominica, just for Dominica, remitted well over 40 million US dollars by way of remittances to Dominica. 40 million US dollars. And I'm sure that number is much higher for maybe Jamaica or Barbados or any one of the other regions. Now, the question remains, out of that 40 million that comes, in regular remittances, barrels, whatever you call it, if we can take 1% of that, I'm not even saying 10%, just 1% of that, and invest it in an initiative or a business or something of that sort, I think that is the kind of impact we'd like to see. So I think it's a great initiative. I will say, though, however, there are going to be some challenges. Mm-hmm. And I think Tom alluded to some of those, and Dr. Winsome, Leslie mentioned some of these challenges. I heard Tom mention the fact that business plans we know what the problem is with that, with small businesses. Financial statements. These are some of the major issues that these businesses confront when they present themselves to the local banks back home. That, you know, it's mom and dad running this thing, or mom and dad and daughter, and they may be doing very well. Don't get me wrong. They may be doing very well in terms of the product they're selling or the service they're offering, but they just haven't gotten into that mindset to say, well, hey, I'm running a business. I need to have a register of whoever owns the business. I need to have business plans. I need to have financial statements. I need to know how much going in, coming out. So that's going to be a huge challenge. And of course, the next one comes, and that's where I guess the ECSRC would come in terms of trust and transparency. Because while we in the diaspora would like to make our monies available, I want to know, well, hey, if I put 25,000 US dollars in this thing, that this thing will work, not work. And granted, I take the point of the risk that Dr. Wint mentioned. There's going to be a risk. Even up here, if we invest up here, there are risks as well. But I think there is even a greater level of trust and transparency. And it all boils again, you know, the whole politics of the region. They don't do things right. They're corrupt. People take the money, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are genuine concerns.
Right. And that's not it to say we don't have it up here, you know, don't get me wrong. But I think these are the challenges we have to debunk as we move forward. But I think it's a great initiative. And whatever I'm sure we can do on Push Past 10 and the various social media platforms to engage our folks, would be happy to do that.
Because, you know, Alvin, that is exactly where I was going. I was thinking, you know, Alvin, we have our work cut out for us, because in order to take advantage of these opportunities, our people at home have to be prepared with their business plans and their financial statements.
Absolutely.
And I also wanted to piggyback on what you said about the remittances, because I had the same thought as well. Here we are sending home $40 million of remittances and no return on the investment. I mean, yes, our family gets the benefits of the barrels and the money, but an actual return on the investment. So that is what we're looking at in increasing access to financing for small businesses by developing, you know, the crowdfunding platform and providing the regulation that will govern this platform. So anybody else has any comments as we proceed?
Well, I think that you've touched on two very important things, but I think there needs to be a systematic approach to preparation for companies. This came up as a key point when we had the stakeholder consultations. And this sort of the flip side of this is trust, because if companies are not willing to be fully transparent about their operations in a crowdfunding scenario, then investors are going to have confidence in investing, right? So whatever is put in that offering document has to be accurate. It has to be, you know, it has to be the truth, and it has to be fully transparent, all that information. And unfortunately, perhaps it's a cultural thing. Companies are not willing, generally speaking, in the Caribbean, to provide details on their operations out there in an online format in particular, right? So I think there's a hurdle to be overcome there. One, the issue of trust, and also the issue of preparation. And I think why the rules are so important, and Tom's point about sort of making them rigorous enough to inspire confidence on the part of investors, but not so rigorous that you choke off the process of investing or companies willing to be listed on a platform to raise funds. That, you know, I'm just thinking the latest iteration of a drama around investing is happening in Jamaica right now with SSL, where Usain Bolt and several folks got their, you know, they're missing millions out of their investment portfolios. So it's the regulator aspect is very, very key to build confidence, you know, on both sides, both on the part of investors and entrepreneurs. But having said that, I think myself and the team at ECSRC, we agree that this is really a very doable and viable option for financing for firms in ECCU, as opposed to conventional equity financing, given the fact that the companies are smaller, et cetera, and a whole host of other things in the environment. So I think if we can attack those issues, the training, the building of the confidence, the transparency, I think we can really make this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom, Alusha, any comments?
Yeah, thanks, Simone. I just wanted to touch on something that Alvin said. One of the things that he mentioned as well is the availability of not just financing from the diaspora, from persons in the diaspora, but technical support, technical assistance and expertise. So I'm thinking that that is something we can also tap into for those companies that would really need to provide the level of disclosure and information that the investors would need. So that is something that we can also talk about at some point in terms of providing that expertise and that level of support for some of those businesses that are really viable and are good candidates for crowdfunding and operate in our jurisdiction.
No, absolutely. I agree with that entirely. It has to work in tandem with the financial part of it, because we all know that that's a major challenge in the region, major one. And although you do have, like I know in Dominica's case, you have what they call them, the NDFD, the National Development Foundation Fund or whatever, which provide training and that sort of thing for small businesses. But you still have that area. And I think that is where too, like Alusha just mentioned, from us in the diaspora can provide that support. Because once, as Winsome says, you can minimize, or rather build that trust. Trust is key in any relationship. Trust. Once you could build that trust, I think we would be on a road to success. And I think part of it has to be training. And just at the top of my head, as I'm thinking, we may even want to consider, how do we engage, let's say at the college back home, our college grad, because they are the young people that live in college, maybe studying entrepreneurship, and wants to start a business. They don't want to go work for anybody. So if we can find a way to incorporate that, and not only that, they are the social media people. They're not like me and maybe you, Sima. They are the social people. They're into all the platforms. So that's their territory. They're comfortable there. So if we can engage them in the college, and this young bright guy wants to, leave, graduate, and open his engineering business, or this young lady wants to open a floral, whatever, I think that would build a trust, and Winton could come in as diaspora to support. So a lot could come out of the initiative, quite apart from just the crowdfunding platform, which I know is the critical area of focus.
Yeah, and then, yes, go ahead.
No, if I might add something here, because normally there's a certain profile of company that's attractive to the average investor. A company that has a business model that has traction already in the market, that has some financials, that has scalability, clear scalability, right? And that has a business model that's compelling to the investor. But having said that, to come back to your point, Alvin, about startups, it's possible for a startup to build interest in that idea by starting with, say, a donation, right? A donation or reward crowdfunding. If you fund my startup, I'll give you a free service or a free product or whatever. So you build a relationship with that donor, and then it morphs later on into an equity investment. So it doesn't have to be equity crowdfunding initially, it can be, so in other words, you're stoking fires at the level of the community college or the university for an equity crowdfunding play, 2 years down the road, let's say. But I think there are two pieces of it. There's one, creating the pipeline, which comes back to the college scenario and working with college students and so on. And there's the other piece, which is getting companies that are ready and prospects for crowdfunding now to be on a platform. So I think we can work at two levels, because ultimately you don't want a platform that has 5 companies and then there's no pipeline coming behind. So I think we have to work at two levels here.
I agree.
Yeah, and I also think it's important. Do we have a projected timeline on this project that is being considered? What are the next expectations, the next steps in the project?
Okay, so now we're in the process of doing the investor awareness and training, which should be completed by early February, the training aspect completed by early February. But we want to continue the investor awareness programs going, so that persons are aware of what we're doing, what we're planning to introduce. In terms of the crowdfunding platform, we're looking at having something ready to go by June. That may be a little optimistic from our perspective, but we shooting for June, and hopefully we can have something credible and something that is ready to go by that time. But please don't hold me to that date. But this is something that we are trying to work and get ready by the end of June, hopefully this year.
Yeah, and what would you say to anyone who's interested in being a part of it? How can they prepare now for the possibility of being an investor, the possibility of receiving an investment? What should they be looking at doing right now to be a part of this project?
Well, for one, just participating and attending those awareness raising initiatives that we have, so that they can learn a lot more about crowdfunding, and if they are an investor, to be able to assess an investment when it does become available. We also want them to participate in the review of the rules. Well, the rules are almost completed. They've all, well, nearly finalized now. But we would like to invite persons to provide feedback. We're still open to feedback, right, Tom? We can still receive feedback on those rules, and it's posted on the ECSRC website. It's www.ecsrc.com. So persons can go on there. There's an information portal on crowdfunding on the whole project that has been created, and it is on our website. And we encourage persons to go on to the website and learn more about this whole project, and to read and review the rules, so that they can understand what we're introducing, and also get a better appreciation for the framework that will be put in place when it does come around. We also encourage persons to participate in, although the training is for entrepreneurs, we would want investors who may be interested in investing in the crowdfunding platform to also participate in that training that Dr. Leslie is doing. So it does provide some good information on crowdfunding, and also, what you need to do in terms of valuing companies and things of that nature, that I think would be also important for investors to understand and to know about.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure we got the website correct. You said www.ecsrc.com?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got it right before posting it. Yes, so as our time winds down, I want to thank everyone for being here with us to present on crowdfunding, an exciting new tool for investing in the Eastern Caribbean. So again, providing the much needed funds that our small business, our developing businesses need in the Caribbean to be able to grow and develop. Kevin Valley, thank you for being here. Gail Bruni, Simone James, Louisa Jean-Pierre, my mom, Medina Senhouse, thank you for being here. So as we wind down the program for today, and of course, we're looking forward to continuing to collaborate on this very important project, raising awareness and being a part of the training programs on this project. So as we wind down for today, any final thoughts that anyone would like to share with us?
But let me just ask Dr. Leslie a quick question. Maybe that
Yes.
could be incorporated in our final thoughts. Like everything else, if I'm coming out with a new product, there's a demand. If I'm coming out with a service, there's a demand as well. So in terms of that initiative, I know we will obviously have several more sessions. Do you say that there is, or that there was, or there is a huge demand in the region for that type of, which is capital, which is funding, which the crowdfunding platform is going to provide? Is there a huge demand for it? I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
muted.
you're saying is there a huge amount of
Yeah,
capital?
so what I'm saying is that the ECSRC would not have undertaken an initiative like that if there wasn't a
Yes.
need or a demand. You see what I'm saying?
No, there's a huge financing gap in the region.
And I think that too has to be the
ahead of
selling
me.
point.
I don't have a number in front of me, but what the rationale for the project was precisely because there's a huge financing gap in the Eastern Caribbean. And under the best of circumstances, there's no way that the commercial banks will be able to satisfy that demand. This is why they're developing, or they have developed one new product, the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Risk Guarantee Program that runs to the banks. That's an attempt to broaden the scope and options for financing. But yes, there is a huge demand for financing. But of course, there are several aspects to that. There is a demand side, yes, but there's also whether companies are ready. So, that's the other side of the coin. But yes, absolutely. And this is why it's important for us to really see this project come to fruition and to really have another option for financing in the sub-region.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone else? Final thoughts? Tom? Alusha?
No, I would just say very briefly that it's been a really interesting discussion, and I just agree with every point that's been made, really. And I think, from a regulations perspective, it's about that balance, right? And Mr. Thomas, you sort of articulated it, I think, that between giving trust and confidence to investors while ensuring we don't create undue barriers for companies that are looking to raise money. Getting that balance right, I think, is something we've tried to do, something we've explored through consultation events. It's a difficult thing, and I think one of the things we're looking to do in the sandbox is to actually allow these firms, some of these portals, to actually test in the live market, and then to help us sort of refine and to check whether we've got that balance right. So yeah, it's a difficult thing. I think it's something we're very aware of, but I appreciate your comments.
Yes, thank you. Alusha?
Yeah, and just to say that, like I said, it's an exciting project. It presents a lot of opportunities and prospects for persons in the region as well as those living outside. And we're hoping that we can get as many persons as possible onto this project and getting involved as we promote our countries and promote economic development for our people in the region. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So again, you've been viewing and listening to Crowdfunding, an exciting new tool for investing in the Eastern Caribbean, a presentation of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, as well as Dev Solutions Consulting, LLC. Today, we were joined by Dr. Winsome Leslie, the CEO and founder of Dev Consulting, the Chief Executive Officer of Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, Ms. Alusha Faisal, as well as Mr. Tom Ward, the technical consultant, and our, most patriotic Dominican I know, always looking for opportunities for investment in Dominica, Mr. Alvin Thomas. Thank you so much for being here as we continue to work on opportunities to advance Dominica, the Caribbean region, and our people in the diaspora. As always, I am Simone Matthew. We see Gloria McLaurin just signed in, and she said, this sounds exciting. Yes, so very exciting. And we're looking forward to continue to spread the word on this initiative. We continue to look forward to maybe help our businesses who we know will have the challenges with regards to being able to fully participate in a program such as this. So again, thank you for being here on Push Past 10. It is always a pleasure to be able to bring you these programs, bring you this information as we continue to work to advance the lives of our people in the Caribbean as well as the wider world. So with that, we say, well, it's still morning. So good morning. Have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, you take care.
Thank you,
Thank
Simone.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie.
Yes, thank you.
And Tom.